Ooh. I use action cameras a lot, usually when running, biking, hiking, sometimes swimming, and sometimes travel. I generally work with one particular brand of action camera, and I've done so for over a decade. A few weeks ago, Insta360 sent me their Go 3 to review the specs and the key features. I've done quite a few things with the Go 3 since it arrived, but the focus of this video is running, to look at whether or not the Go 3 is a useful tool to take out for a run. But before we do that, we'll go out for a run shortly, let's take a look at the Go 3. It comes with a bunch of accessories and mounts in the box, which is pretty comprehensive. There's a pendant mount that makes use of the magnetic Go 3 camera, a hat clip, a pivot stand with a sticky base. The pivot stand can also be used with other mounts too. We'll talk more about mounts later in the video. If you are new to Insta360 and the Go Ranger cameras, then here's the quick tour. The Go cameras are small, lightweight cameras intended to be able to get anywhere where the action is, to be able to catch a moment that would otherwise be impossible with any other camera system. The Go 3 was launched this year, being 2023, replacing the Go 2 that was launched in early 2021, and the Go 3 brings a whole load of upgrades to the Go 2. The first and most obvious difference is that the Go 3 camera now comes with this action pod, with this large touch-sensitive screen that flips up to make vlogging much easier. The screen is fast and responsive and allows you to make selections and changes to the camera's functions. The Go 3 has many more camera functions than the previous Go 2 had, but we'll talk about that shortly. The battery in the action pod will charge the Go 3 camera from the moment the camera is inserted into the action pod. On the camera itself, we get around 45 minutes of battery time, but when combined with the action pod, it's almost 3 hours. It's actually about 170 minutes of battery life. Now, the battery is not removable, but at almost 3 hours of recording time, there's plenty of battery to cover most uses of the Go 3 camera. The camera is held in the action pod with a strong magnet and a lock that's released with this button here. When it's out of the action pod, the camera is a fully functioning camera with video and audio recording, with an internal memory of 32 gig, 64 gig, or 128 gig, depending which one you bought. It's a fully fledged camera. It will take videos, it will take photos, time lapses, star lapses, slow motion, photo sequences. There's a few other in there as well. It's just tiny though. It weighs 1.2 ounces, that's about 35 grams. Anywhere you mount it, you're just not going to notice it's there. To put that weight in perspective, it's less than half the weight of my Garmin Fenix 7 watch here on my wrist, less than half. Now on top of the mounting system, it's also magnetic, so you can stick it pretty much anywhere. As long as it's metal, it'll stick to it. So this is not sponsored by Insta360, but they did send me this Go 3 to review and put some videos out here on YouTube. Just so you should know that while you watch this video. The camera is waterproof down to about 16 feet, so you can snorkel with it and run in the rain with it. The action pod is not waterproof, it's water resistant, so you need to keep that on the beach when you're going snorkeling. There are 3 microphones on this camera. They do a great job of capturing sound. I have no complaints at all with these. There's a single button on the camera that you can program to do different things with 1 press and 2 presses. The way I have it set up, 1 press starts recording video, and I have 2 presses set up to take a photo. I've actually learned also this button is disabled when the camera is inserted into the action pod. I can't tell you how many shots I made thinking I was actually recording clips when I wasn't, but it was my mistake. So keep that in mind, that button doesn't work when it's in the pod. Other than those functions, there's not much you can do from the camera itself. It's designed to be as small and lightweight as possible. Everything else is done on the action pod through this touchscreen. But that includes when the camera is not inserted in the action pod. Usually, when you set up an action camera on your head or your chest mount or bike or anywhere actually, you kind of trust that you set it up correctly and that you got it pointed in the right direction as well to get the shot that you want. With the Go 3, all of that's made so much easier by the remote capability of this action pod. Take the camera out and immediately the action pod becomes a fully functioning camera monitor. I can wear the camera on the pendant, the monkey tail, the hat clip, anywhere. I can see what the camera is seeing on the monitor in my hand or mounted on a pole. This feature is incredibly useful and I've been using it every day since this camera arrived. I've had action camera remotes before. I've had quite a few of them actually, but they're always a separate device that needs to be charged, paired, powered on, and most importantly, they need to be with you when you decide to use them. And often one of those things hasn't happened, which meant I haven't had the remote with me or usable when I wanted it. None of that applies to the action pod. It's always going to be with you anyway. You just pop the camera out and the remote is already in your hand. It's already paired. It's already a fully functioning remote control and a fully functioning monitor. The screen on the action pod is a touchscreen. It works just like any other high-end touchscreen these days. It's bright, clear and very responsive, and there's some tactile feedback when you touch it. As a runner, biker, hiker, and occasional swimmer, the two modes I'm using the most are video and free frame, and I'm going to focus really on those two modes for the rest of this review. So let's start with video. In video, the Go 3 shoots in 2.7K up to 30 frames a second and up to 50 frames a second in 1440 and 1080 resolution. I usually film in 24 frames a second, so I've been shooting at 2.724 for most of the filming I've done with the Go 3. If I want to slow something down, I go to 1440, 50 frames a second, and then slow it down by 50%. There is also a slow motion mode here on the Go 3, which can go to 120 frames a second at 1080 to get incredibly slow motion footage. In terms of aspect ratio, you've got 16:9 for regular video such as YouTube, or you can go 9:16 for shorts and other social media posts. There are 4 levels of stabilization available: off, standard, high, and max. For running, I'm using high. All the footage I've shot is with the sharpness setting on medium. I found the video clips are sharp and natural looking. Given the small sensor, dynamic range is pretty good, as is noise control too. Video mode does everything in the camera. I don't have to do anything with it in the app in post unless I want to. So I can take the footage from this camera and put it straight into Final Cut Pro and start to work with it. If I look at the audio recording now, there are 3 options: wind reduction, stereo, and direction focus. So this is a bit of a mic test, but also it's useful having that monitor. I'm used to having a front screen on other action cameras, and you can see roughly where you are in that image. You can get enough of a feel for where you are. But this, with this screen being so much larger, I can see the composition pretty well, but I can also, more crucially, see all my settings. So normally this is a weekday run for me along here. I thought, being a Sunday, the road might be quieter. Of course it's not. Just less landscaping trucks going up and down. I'm using wind reduction generally as I'm moving outside and, well, I'm running. So I think it makes sense to do that. It does mute the sound slightly, but it does provide better sound in the event of wind noise. With the 3 mics on the Go 3, I find the audio quality is perfectly good for what I'm doing with this. There is no option for an external mic, but for running, I'm happy with what's coming out of the internal microphones. Moving now to free frame video. Now, this is special. All cameras today are using some of the sensor around the edge of the frame to allow the software to stabilize the footage. That's the basics of how stabilization works. This is why generally increased stabilization leads to a smaller field of view. Free frame on the Go 3 gives you the unusual option to do something slightly different. It gives you the full sensor to record with. So you can select everything else in post after you've done the recording, such as aspect ratio, the level of flow state stabilization, the horizon lock, and to some extent, some reframing too, all of which can be done in the Insta360 phone app or their desktop software called Studio. This means that when you first see it, it's a circle, rather like 360 footage, but it's not 360, but it does need to be edited in the Insta360 phone app or the Studio desktop software. There are lots of other modes here, but from what I'm doing with the Go 3 so far, I focus on these modes because these are the ones I'm using the most. Let's talk about mounts. The mounts are super easy to use and can be used together in many, many different ways. The action pod and the camera can both clip into the same mounting system, which is pretty cool. It's magnetic and also has locking clips to secure it onto the mount. It's very satisfying, and that's not just the action pod either. If I take the camera out of the action pod, camera on this side. So with just the camera and a selfie stick, that's pretty discreet to me. I can't believe that a grown man. Show me a mount system that's quicker than that. There are 2 exceptions here, the hat clip and the pendant, which rely purely on the magnets, which might be why they're not intended for action sports, although it's a pretty powerful magnet, so I would probably still run with the pendant. The pivot stand has been used a lot on the sticky mount, the 2 selfie sticks, and also the monkey tail. And then you mount the action pod or the Go 3 camera onto either of them, same with the monkey tail. The quick release mount is very similar to the pivot mount, except it gives you more mounting options, including a standard camera tripod base and also a GoPro style thumb screw mounting system. This opens up any other mounting solutions that you've already got in your collection to be used with the Go 3. Now, the Insta360 selfie sticks and tripod poles are my favorites from any manufacturer. They're well made, easy to open, easy to close, and there's no fussy mechanisms to deal with, which is probably also why they are smaller and lighter than most other ones, so I really like them a lot. Now, here's the thing with selfie sticks. I know selfie sticks are a bit of a divisive subject. I think the Go 3 helps a lot with. If you're touring a city, so I'm not talking about running, biking, and hiking here. If you're touring a city, say as a tourist, a phone and a selfie stick in an urban environment just says, steal me. So does a camera or an action camera. But when you put the Go 3 camera on a selfie stick and walk around a city, there's literally nothing to steal. It's super discreet. So just another thought. The mounts feel very secure, but there is a little bit of wiggle in them. You can probably hear that. It seems to be the interface between the camera and the mount. Now I have to be careful because when I go running with this, I usually hold a camera like this with the screen in the palm of my hand and gripping the sides. I keep my hand away from the lens because when I run, there's literally no dry fabric on me at all with which to clean the lens. So I hold it like this. But if I hold it like this, there is the risk that I hit these two locks and the camera could drop off. Now, when I try and demonstrate it, I can't actually do it, but it does concern me a bit that I am gripping the locks. Overall though, I really like the mount system. It's well thought out and well made. It's so quick. You don't have to think about, do I switch from a hat clip to a chest mount or to a selfie pole? It's just so quick to do. You can just do it. There's no thumb screws to be messing with. So what do I like and what do I not like? Well, overall, I'm very pleased with the Go 3 and I truly wasn't expecting that. Let's start with what I like. The size and the weight of the Go 3 make this so usable in situations where other cameras are just too big, either through too much bulk or too much weight. The integration between the camera and the action pod makes it very versatile. You can remove the camera, use the pod as a remote screen in a split second, and then clip them back together again. It's so discreet. I can put this on a hat brim or a pendant. Literally no one's going to pay too much attention, and you yourself kind of forget that it's there. On top of that, you can literally mount it anywhere that's magnetic. It is a strong magnet. The mics, they're really good, all three of them. I wasn't expecting that from such a small camera. They seem to capture the sound really well, even when the camera's on the hat clip and the pendant. And I love this mounting system. You don't have to plan ahead. With the Go 3, you just pull it out, clip it in, unclip it again. The camera and the action pod are really well made. I think it's a really good design. I think it feels very solid and it feels to be made of very high quality materials too. The lens has a screw-in lens guard, which is good to know. And I didn't realize that when I first got the camera actually. And they're super cheap to replace too. They're like 10 bucks for two. Very easy to replace if you damage them. And lastly, I like the system. I think the selfie sticks, the monkey tail, the mounts, I think that's all a fantastic system. So I'm really, really pleased with it. What would I like to see improved? I would like to see 4K in this camera format. I'm very pleased with the image quality at 2.7K. And actually, even at 1440, 50 frames a second, the image quality is excellent and usable, but I'm used to shooting everything else these days at 4K. However, I've got no hesitation using clips from the Go 3 in my videos going forward. So I guess it's not a problem. I'm not a fan of the white. I understand that it needs to look different, but I think it could be even more discreet if it was black or a dark gray. I'm not really comfortable about the movement in the mount system, but I guess it's a compromise because it's supposed to be quick and easy to use, but I've talked about that already, and the camera's never fallen off on me. There is some delay with the camera. When you first turn it on, it takes a few seconds to boot up. When you select a mode, and then every time you press record, there's actually a screen that comes up that says loading for maybe half to 1 second. During that time, the camera is not recording. Now you do get used to this, and at least there is a graphic there saying loading, so it's not a blank screen leaving you hanging, but it's something you have to get used to because I think we're all used to pressing the shutter now and expecting the camera to start recording immediately. So I guess this is kind of another U-turn video here on this channel. There's been a few of those. I'm very brand loyal, as I said at the beginning, but I really like the Insta360 GO 3. It's got some really cool and well thought out features. In my case, the Go 3 adds functionality and adds potential for making videos I wouldn't otherwise be able to make at all. I don't enjoy running with a GoPro on a chest mount or a GoPro on a hat mount. It's just too big and heavy. So I generally just use a selfie stick, and that limits the different shots I can do when I'm going out for a run. It also means I can't really take a GoPro with me to a race. The Go 3 happily sits on my hat with a clip and is almost undetectable, including by me, because you actually forget that it's there. In my view, the Go 3 is not intended to replace your existing action cameras. It's something you should consider adding to your equipment list, as I am doing. This channel provides thoughts and opinions on anything I can run with, bike with, hike with, and occasionally swim with. If that's something you want to know more about, please do consider subscribing to the channel. I put a link in the description below to the Insta360 GO 3 and some of the accessories. Please do let me know in the comments what you think of the Go 3 and this video. My name is Julian. Thank you so much for watching.